So my name is Hakeem Weatherspoon. I'm the founder and CEO of Exotanium. Exotanium is a software-based business, and it's also one of the companies that Marnie mentioned earlier around 3 o'clock. That's a new portfolio company. We're closing this week. So we are a software-based business for the cloud, and we help enterprise companies use the cloud and save lots of money while they do that. Okay. And so the key here is, what is the cloud? So we just take a step back. The way it used to work is that you would pay for physical machines on premise, and you'd have an IT staff that maintained that, and you had a whole bunch of capital expenses that went along with that. And about 10, 15 years ago, a new business model arose where instead you could rent a virtual machine. All you needed was the internet connection and a credit card, and you could buy as many machines as you liked. And the companies that epitomize the cloud are Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. They all have very large data centers that have millions of machines. And so the key here is that a lot of companies thought that they would reduce their costs by moving from a capital expense to an operational expense. Unfortunately, they were wrong. In fact, even in this time of COVID and before, we are online, and the demand for the cloud has increased dramatically. In fact, Amazon's demand and Microsoft's Azure demand has gone up over 775%. And what this means for companies that use the cloud is that a lot of their money then is going to those companies. So a number of companies we've talked to are spending up to 50% of their revenue in the cloud. That's essentially donating to Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Part of the issue here is, if you look at this line, this green line, it may be the number of machines, number of virtual machines that you need over time. And the blue line is the number of machines you may be paying for. And that gray area is waste. And in fact, $14 billion was wasted last year. And the reason why you may have this type of waste is you may be paying for machines but not using them, or you may be paying for machines that are too large. Okay, and then some companies help you to reduce that waste. They help you monitor and give you health reports and whatnot, and they can reduce that by about a third, so that you don't waste quite as much. But you see there's still a gray area here. And more important is the white area, which is that if I want to change the size of the virtual machine that I'm using, for example, I would have to stop my application. So a couple examples: imagine you're watching Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, and whatever you're watching just stops for 15, 20, 30 minutes. Or if you're using some of the companies here, or like we're working with another design company called Autodesk, and one of their customers is simulating something and it stops for 30 minutes. That's just absolutely unacceptable for most companies. So what we have here then is the number one hair on fire problem for the cloud is that you're able to somehow reduce the cost of running in the cloud. And this is essential today. We all live in an online world. We're here in a virtual summit after all, and do so without actually any downtime either, so no interruption. So what we have then is a solution that then brings what you pay for in line with what the demand is. And we do so, there's no actual white area, so we do so without any interruption to your application whatsoever. It's kind of like hitting the optimize button on your phone and getting rid of all the background applications that you don't need. We're able to do this, I'll show you, but we're able to essentially decrease the cost of enterprise companies up to 90%. And so the way that we do that is there's a key application that we have called XSpot. And in the cloud, it uses what's called the spot market, which is different than other spot markets. What this means is that the cloud provider has to have excess computing, excess computers, and they'll sell that much cheaper. So here is a VM, or virtual machine. It'll cost about $500 to use the average size virtual machine for a year. And the yellow just represents applications. If I'm able to use the spot market, then I may be able to run the same virtual machine for 100 times less. Okay, and the key is why doesn't everybody use the spot market? And so the key is that it's excess computing that Amazon, Google, Microsoft maintain to handle surges themselves. And if they need it, then they will kill your application. So that is the reason why that a lot of people don't use this, is that your application may actually be terminated at any point in time. So what XSpot does is before that happens, it'll actually move your application back to this regular, what's called on-demand cloud. So essentially what we do is we make what looks volatile stable. Okay, and then we allow you to then run your application reliably without interruption in the cloud at up to a 90% reduction in cost. Okay, so that means that if your cloud spend was $1 million, it would now go down 900,000 to 100,000. Okay, this is based off of research at Cornell. We have a patent over this technology and a exclusive license that patent. It was filed with at Cornell Technology and Licensing. The underlying technology is something called an X container. Container is a popular abstraction today that essentially allows you to put your application and all the libraries and everything it depends on together one time and then run it anywhere that you want. X container is a way to do that better. And then it plugs into a thing called Kubernetes. It's just a way to manage all of your applications. And about 86% of people use some type of container or orchestrator today. And then we have a artificial intelligence way of optimizing where your application running to reduce the cost. All right. As far as the competitor landscape, the closest company is one called Spot. Or Spot Inc. it used to be called, and they also allow companies to use the spot market, and they also claim up to 90% cost reduction. And the difference between us and them is that they work on about the 5 to 10% of applications that can tolerate being terminated, whereas we work with all applications whether they can tolerate being terminated or not. And a good example of that is a application that has millions of lines of code and is not going to be rewritten anytime soon to handle that type of volatile environment. So the underlying technology is a live migration. We actually move the application between a spot market and back. And we do that to provide a continuous availability. Nobody does that. This is a significant competitive advantage. It's what came out of the research from Cornell. There are other companies that do, like I said, a health monitoring and some automation to reduce your costs. Okay, and I should also mention that Spot Inc. was bought recently, a couple weeks ago, for $450 million by a company called NetApp. So this is a very hot market, and there's significant room to grow. In particular, the market size for the cloud management platform market was $8 billion in 2018 and projected to be $26 billion by 2024 and growing at 18.4% compound annual growth rate. The segment that we are in is a business-to-business enterprise. This says software as a service, essentially a cloud native, so an application that runs natively in the cloud. And this is across sectors for retail and finance and healthcare. They all today have some number of applications that run in the cloud, and we've actually heard a variety of that just in this room today. The target customer then is that person who is in charge of or director of the development operations, essentially that cloud architecture. And our key value proposition is that we significantly reduce the cost of running in the cloud, which is critical today. And optimize the resources that you're using. We simplify the scheduling and the resources that you use and improve the performance and the experience. I'll get into the revenue in the next slide. The key here is that the target addressable market, that $8 billion I talked about, 2/3 of it are Linux users as opposed to Windows. And so that's the 5.5 billion there. The service addressable market is about 20% or a little under $1 billion, and we'd be able to obtain within a couple years 60 million or 6% of that market. The model that the revenue model is that if you look at IDG, a enterprise company of 1,000 or more people spends about $2.2 million a year in the cloud. Of that cloud spend, about 2/3 are on compute, that virtual machine, as opposed to storage. Storage would be separate. So about 1.5 million are on the compute or the machines that you would need in the cloud. And if we were to conservatively save about 30%, about $500,000, the customers see their bill go down from 1.5 million to $1 million, and we charged 20% of that savings, then it'd be a little under 100,000 a year. So that's what we'd expect per customer, is right around 100,000. This actually is fairly conservative. We could easily charge more than 30%. Spot Inst does that, for example, and quite a bit higher. And also we would be able to save more than 30%. Example of this is that we have a pilot right now with Autodesk, and we have been able to demonstrate that we're able to consistently save 2/3, almost 70%. So instead of spending $1 million a year, it would go down to 300,000, saving 700,000. The team here is myself, Robert, and Zimming. Robert and I are professors at Cornell. I've been a professor there for 13 years. Robert's been there for 30 years. We worked together with Zimming for 8 years. This Exotanium is based off of Zimming's PhD thesis. Between us, we have 3 exits sold to Amazon and Microsoft. And in fact, in some sense, Robert is the godfather of the cloud. He hired a person named Werner Vogels in the early 2000s to Cornell. They then had a startup. They sold that startup to Amazon, which was where Werner then went and became the CTO of Amazon and started Amazon Web Services. So not only is he the godfather of the cloud, he's actually Werner's godfather of his child as well. But in any case, we have deep technical experience and experience with startups as well. We also, to round it out, have a great team with Scott Terhar as our Chief Financial Officer. We have another additional software developer and admin, Ashley. And then we also have great talent for our board with Ken Rother, who's been at Cornell for quite some time and done a lot with Launch New York and other companies as well. And then also Dan Sturman, who actually his father was the first PhD at Cornell, and he himself was part of the team that started Kubernetes at Google, and then went on and helped to start Cloudera as well, and now started a startup for a gaming company. Okay, and then finally, where we're at right now is we actually started last year, where we received a National Science Foundation SBIR Small Business Innovation Research Grant in February. We filed our patent in April and received a 50,000 Cornell Technology and Maturation Fund in June. We did an NSF I-Core, pivoted actually, we were a security company first, and then finished that in September. We did a friends and family round. We started a pilot in November, finished that pilot in April, and after we pivoted, we had a first demo of our MVP early this year as well. Looking over on the right for our customer and financial milestones, we're actually closing a pre-seed right now. We have raised $1 million, and we have $1 million committed that we are we'll have closed this week. If you're interested, let us know. But it's we're just about done with this this round right here. With this funding, we'll have 3 going up a little bit. We'll have 3 pilots of revenue producing pilots that will then be referenceable enterprise customers as well. And then we'll be able to go beyond that to 10 or 20 customers next year. So the key here is that with this seed, we will have revenue producing pilot that have installed XBot within their environment and ran that for 3 to 6 months successfully. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and stop there and take any questions that may be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Akeem. We have time for maybe one or two questions quickly. And of course, you can proceed into the private room as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.